All right, how about that? I think that I made some good time. 49ers drafted Mykel Williams. I was in the facility for that. I wrote an entire article up on the San Francisco Standard, about 1,000 words long. This is the most in-depth piece that you're going to get about this. So go ahead and check out the San Francisco Standard. That, of course, was after talking to John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and Mykel Williams himself. He's in the Atlanta area. He's going to be on a flight to San Francisco tomorrow morning. Thankfully, Delta flies between the Atlanta hub and San Francisco frequently. I think he could be on the first flight coming in tomorrow morning. Then, I mean, he could also take United too, I guess. But Mykel Williams is going to be here in the Bay Area tomorrow, and we're going to get a chance to meet him in person. It's going to be tremendously exciting for the 49ers because they have begun the reconstruction of their defensive line. Big time renovation was needed this offseason. So I did all that, and now I made it back to the room. As you guys know, I get a hotel for the draft. Cuts down on drag. Don't have to go all the way back up to San Francisco because we have a lot to talk about starting now with Mykel Williams. So the article is linked in the description. Why the 49ers drafted Mykel Williams in the first round. Pick number 11. They wanted to trade up for him. How cool is that? They didn't have to spend any capital to trade up for him. Trade didn't work. And then Kyle Shanahan was teasing John Lynch about that. I mean, if there was a taker in the top 10, had there been a taker in the top 10, then the 49ers certainly would have lost some draft capital. Instead, they still have 10 picks remaining entering day 2 of this NFL draft. And with those 10 picks, well, take a look at one of these quotes from John Lynch in the article. We've got 10 more picks, and Williams won't be the only defensive lineman. We've got to keep going. We've always talked about they're the engine that stirs our defense. So the 49ers are certainly going to be dipping back into that D-line pool tomorrow. Defensive tackle is a major position of need for San Francisco. I think that we expected them to take either a defensive tackle or a defensive end here in the first round, and they went with the edge rusher because that is a premium position. You talk about edge rusher, you talk about offensive tackle. Outside of QB, those are the two most premium positions. So they were always, I think, especially after we heard John Lynch talk over the course of the past few days, when he talked about the importance of setting the edge, when he talked about that defensive end position at the pre-draft press conference, I think that it became eminently likely that the 49ers would go value at edge rusher. They do that with Mykel Williams. You can see the big body there. He models his game after Myles Garrett. So let's talk a little bit about size. 6'5", between 265 and 275 pounds. 270 pounds. We'll say 267, I think, was the pro day measurement for Mykel Williams, where, by the way, he was able to deliver a 4.77 40-yard dash at the 267 pounds, which was heavier than he was at the combine. So 161, 10-yard split, 4.77 40-yard dash. I mean, those are two really, really impressive metrics. The guy can move, but it's his size that I think is a big-time calling card for the 49ers because they think he's the best edge setter in the draft. Here's a couple pieces of intel. Chris Kasarik thinks that he set the edge better than anyone in college football over the course of the past couple years. That's huge. John Lynch thinks that his power, his speed to power is going to be very, very effective rushing the passer at the NFL level. I see some concerns about Mykel Williams as a pass rusher, but I said this before the draft, so you can't just accuse me of saying this after the 49ers picked him. This is something I was talking about over the course of the past week. He should not be placed into the same category as Shamar Stewart. That's not fair to Mykel Williams. Shamar Stewart, that's the ultimate traits-based prospect who only had 4 total sacks over the course of his college career at Texas A&M. And a lot of people were worried that the 49ers were going to pick Shamar Stewart and that it'd be a big developmental swing to take at pick number 11. Mykel Williams belongs in a different bucket than Shamar Stewart. Mykel Williams was able to deliver 5 sacks, which is a whole lot more than a sack and a half over the past season for Shamar Stewart, but he was able to deliver 5 while he had a high ankle sprain. That was suffered in week 1 for Georgia. And that's actually one of the things that truly sold the 49ers on Mykel Williams was the fact that he played through that high ankle sprain. It's something that kept on getting aggravated over the course of the season, but he showed the toughness to play through it. When they talked to Will Muschamp, that's the former college head coach who's on Georgia's staff. They might have talked a little bit to Kirby Smart, but they didn't want to tip off their hand. When they talked to the people at Georgia, they got a very, very good sense of the leadership that Mykel Williams exhibited by playing on that high ankle sprain. Then we talked to Mykel after he was drafted on that Zoom call, and I posted the video on the channel, so you guys can check out my YouTube channel for the full interview. But when we talked to Mykel, he said that it wasn't a smart decision to play on the high ankle sprain. So the guy's 20 years old. He's got good self-awareness. He says in retrospect, maybe I shouldn't have played. But what I can say, regardless of whether that was a good decision or not to play on the high ankle sprain, Williams is 100% healthy now. He confirmed that on the phone call today. And that earned him a ton of cred in the Georgia locker room. And the 49ers, I sat down in John Lynch's office a couple seasons ago when we went through the pillars of what the 49ers look for in the NFL draft. And contagious competitiveness is one of the things they really look for. And they try to figure out if a player has that, especially on the top 30 visit. That's a big spot of intel for the 49ers. So there's contagious competitiveness. There's true passion for the sport. There's obviously leadership, but they try to find these traits in players in a way that they think is going to really translate into their locker room. And, a lot of these things people will dismiss as buzzwords. You've got to find a way to differentiate these players, and you have to find a way to project to see if they're going to fit into the building. Lynch compared Mykel Williams' 30 visit, which he took last week, to Fred Warner's 30 visit in 2018. And there's a great quote on that right here on the article, which is up on the San Francisco Standard, that I actually finish up with. Lynch said that most guys are really nervous on these visits. But here's the quote. If Williams was nervous, he hit it very well. He just seemed very comfortable with who he is, what he wants to be, and that left us very excited. He did a great job letting us know how much football means to him. So you guys will remember that big article that I wrote after, talking about the 49ers and their draft process and the personalities that they look for. The meaning of football to players is extremely important to the 49ers. They need to make sure that you really care. There's another edge rusher, James Pierce Jr., Tennessee, somebody who has great measurables, good production in college, but there were questions about how much the game meant to James Pierce. Like, teams had those questions. I think Walter Nolan played with a whole heck of a lot of fire on tape. So I don't want to say that Walter Nolan was ever loafing. This is a defensive tackle, so it's in a slightly different bucket. But there were still questions about his fit in an NFL locker room. There was that one rumor that he had walked off the field in practice. Obviously, it was an NIL transfer in college. When we look at somebody like Mykel Williams, there's never been any sort of question about his desire to play football at the highest level and his ability to be contagiously competitive. And that's exactly what the 49ers look for. John Lynch is close with Kirby Smart, who is the University of Georgia's head coach. I asked Lynch if this connection to Kirby Smart was big in helping the 49ers vet Mykel Williams, and the answer actually surprised me. Supposedly, John said the 49ers didn't want to tip their hands, so he didn't get all too much intel from Smart. But what truly stuck out about that answer was that he said that the 49ers, just through their visit with this guy at the team facility on the 30 visit, and just through some of the other back channel intel that they did, they got enough. They knew that this was a rock solid character at only 20 years old. So there's probably a lot of meat still left on the bone as far as development goes. But they knew that this was rock solid character. that could fit into the 49ers locker room through the research that they did. Now, the Kirby Smart connection is still really, really important here, and we could talk about this from a schematic point of view. So you got 6'5", 267 pounds. When you look at where the 49ers had a hole and what they needed to fill, we can open up the depth chart. And I've already edited this thing, but I'm going to reverse edit this thing so we can really illustrate where the 49ers are now after this pick heading into day 2 of the draft. So red signifies a hole. So you see 2 holes at defensive tackle right here, right? So I'm going to erase Mykel Williams' name. I'm going to erase the green color coding. I'm going to move we'll keep Yetur Gross-Matos out here at a backup spot, and we're just going to shade in red that defensive end position. The 49ers had Nick Bosa and 3 open spots along the defensive line. They let Leonard Floyd go. They let Malik Collins, a defensive tackle, go. And they needed to replace those players through this NFL draft. So what did they do? Well, they made sure that Mykel Williams took one of those red spots. Now, what you want opposite Nick Bosa in this scheme is an edge rusher who is big enough to not have to come off the field when another team is running successfully against you. Preferably, you don't want that team to ever run successfully against you. The 49ers built this defense on the basis of strong run defense. Remember, stop the run so you can have some fun. That was from Arden Key. When we talked to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, they compared Mykel Williams to Arden Key, to Charles Omenihu, to Eric Armstead. Those are all players that the 49ers really missed last season when the run defense dropped down to number 29. And I can't repeat that enough. The run defense was terrible for the 49ers last season. So this wasn't a situation where you could go out and get a 240-pound edge rusher, a D Ford type of player, and expect things to markedly improve. You could get the best edge rusher in the world at 240 pounds as far as pass rushing goes. But if you can't stop the run, then teams are just going to run it down your throat, and you're never going to get the chance to pass rush. So with this pick, the 49ers prioritize setting the edge, run defense, and they believe that they've got pass rushing juice to come from Mykel Williams. Let's take a look at John Lynch's quote about his belief in Mykel Williams as a pass rusher moving forward into the future. I thought that this was a really insightful one. He's got a lot of upside. His skill set is a guy who can rush with power. He's a good enough athlete where he's got some wiggle. He's extremely proficient when they run games, which are the stunt moves where the edge rushers twist around and they attack the interior. He's a really good stop-start rusher. So for that, we look at the 10-yard split. The 40 time is good. For 267 pounds to be able to run a 4.77, you like that. But you rarely see NFL players, especially guys in the trenches, have to run 40 yards in a straight line. A better way to measure how effective they're going to be athletically within the context of what they're going to be asked to do on the field is the 10-yard split. And at 161 at his pro day, that's really good for Mykel Williams. When we talk about the 49ers R&D department looking for specific traits that they can quantify, that they can say, okay, hey, Chris Kocurek is going to love this guy. This guy's skill set, even though he played a different type of defense at Georgia, they're more react defense than a defense just fired off the ball. Read and react over at Georgia. How is this guy going to port his game into what we run at the NFL level with a wide 9? Well, that's a metric that tells you that. John Lynch says he's got good stop-start as an edge rusher. That means that even with his 267-pound frame, he can redirect in short spaces. How many times have you seen a quarterback, a slippery one, Russell Wilson back in his prime, or you could even say Brock Purdy? How many times have you seen a quarterback just jet away from a larger pass rusher, even if that pass rusher did a good job to beat his blocker and collapse the pocket? You see it happen a lot now because quarterbacks are really athletic. So one of the traits that you look for when you say, okay, how can we develop this pass rusher is the stop-start. How quickly can this guy go from 0 to 60? I don't care how fast he can run a 40-yard dash. I'm not looking for a gold medalist in the 100-meter sprint. I'm looking for somebody who can start and stop on a dime. Start fast, stop on a dime, change directions. And the 49ers think that Mykel Williams can do this with the best of them, and that's why they think that he's got a chance to be a high sack guy as a pass rusher. Again, the sack numbers, 5 sacks last year, despite the fact that he was averaging only 33 snaps a game for Georgia because they had such a loaded defensive line. I think it's nothing to scoff at considering the fact that he was playing on a high ankle sprain for most of the season. And that's actually something that sold the 49ers on Mykel Williams. Now, I mean, if you want to talk about larger overall strategy, the Philadelphia Eagles decided a couple years ago that they were just going to go to the University of Georgia and draft a defensive lineman from Georgia because they saw how dominant Kirby Smart's program was. So I think the 49ers have taken a page out of that book. It's like, okay, let's just draft the Georgia defensive lineman. I think in the first round, you want to make sure that you have a high floor from the player because it's going to hurt really bad if you swing and miss on that first round pick. The 49ers have learned from past mistakes in that regard. Trey Lance being a glaring one. He didn't have a high floor. He might have had a high ceiling, but it didn't really matter because the floor was lower than the basement for Trey Lance because he didn't have a whole lot of NFL experience and there was still a whole lot to work on mechanically. With that first-round draft capital, I think it is very, very important to get something because that's going to be your chance to get the best athletes in this draft, right? The guys with the best measurables, those are the guys that you're probably going to have, especially at premium positions. You're going to have to use a first-round pick to get those guys. So then when you further narrow it down, a guy like Shamar Stewart, yeah, great. Awesome measurables. Probably have to use a first-round pick to get him. But that's a player whose floor is not as high because he hasn't produced in college, and I think there's obviously a chance that he won't produce in the NFL. So then you look at players with similar profiles, and I know it's going to be hard to find a perfect 10 relative athletic score like Shamar Stewart's, but I think Mykel Williams had a really, really good athletic profile. You look at similar profiles and say, can this guy deliver a higher floor at the NFL level? Is this not going to be a completely traits-based gamble? And based on what Mykel Williams did against the run, and Chris Kasarik believes that he was the best run-defending edge guy in all of college football this past year, based on what he did against the run and based on the pass rushing productivity, which actually was much, much greater than somebody like Shamar Stewart's, the 49ers feel that they have their guy. They weren't picking in the top 5. So, Abdul Carter, I think everybody agrees that Abdul Carter was the best edge prospect in this draft. He goes to the New York Giants. 49ers were not picking in the top 5. They're picking at number 11. They thought that Mykel Williams was a top 10 caliber player. They tried to trade up for him. They end up getting him at number 11. And, we should have a listen in to John Lynch for the phone call to Mykel Williams. These are always special moments, and the 49ers posted this video, so I think that it is time to watch it.
Hey, how you doing?
My man, it's John Lynch.
Oh, my
You ready to be a Niner?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's awesome, buddy. We're so fired up to get you, man. We've been sitting here nervous about going up. I tried to go up, didn't work, but we got you here. So we are so damn fired up, man. You're gonna be great for us, man. And the entire building got behind this. So I'm gonna turn you over to Coach Shanahan. All right, buddy. Let's hear it from Mike.
Mykel, congrats, dude.
My dog, what's up, man? Thank you, Coach.
This is what we wanted since day one, man. We're all pumped in here.
Man.
And you with your family right now?
Yeah, man. We loaded.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Enjoy it. All right, it's a special night, and enjoy it because when you get here, man, it's time to go to work, all right?
Thanks, man. Appreciate you, Coach.
All right, dude. You too, man. All right, here's our owner real quick, all right, man?
Yes, sir.
Jed York.
Mykel, how you doing, man? Congratulations.
Man, I'm great, man. I appreciate you.
I can't wait to see you out here. We're fired up. We've been sweating for the last 35, 40 minutes, but we're very, very happy you're here, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, man. I'm blessed to be the pick.
Celebrate tonight. Enjoy.
Got you.
All right, man.
Do.
Bye.
And you know what Jed York tweeted? He said that Robert Saleh's back in the building. The trenches are a point of emphasis for the 49ers again. And they haven't spent valuable capital on a defensive lineman since Drake Jackson in 2022. And that obviously hadn't worked out for the 49ers. And that was a second-round pick. That was down at, number 61 or so? So that was one of those where, yeah, Drake Jackson had some upside. He never was the run defender that Mykel Williams was. This is a whole different caliber of college prospect. If you want to go back to when the 49ers last used draft capital this valuable on an edge player was Nick Bosa in 2019. He was the number 2 overall pick for the 49ers that season after Kyler Murray went to the Arizona Cardinals. Javon Kinlaw was a defensive tackle. He went in the first round, around the middle of the first round the year later in 2020. But if you're talking strictly edge players, well, the 49ers used to invest a ton. I mean, they inherited Eric Armstead, who was an inside-out player. I think when you look at Mykel Williams and his role, I asked this to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. I feel the 49ers have really missed that adaptable star presence up front, like Eric Armstead. They had it with Charles Omenihu, too. They had a little bit of it with Arden Key. I think that's so important for the run defense. And John Lynch answered saying, I think it's important for everything that we do. Lynch was talking about the body type, the 6'5", 270-pound body type. Dane Brugler has an NFL comp for Mykel Williams, and that's Jason Pierre-Paul. If this career goes anything like Jason Pierre-Paul's, if it's 50% of Jason Pierre-Paul's, the 49ers are going to be happy. The 6'5", 270-pound body at edge rusher in a time where the league is downsizing at that position, when you see a lot of 240 to 250-pounders, you get a 270-pounder with some real explosiveness. What you're trying to do is fix that run defense that finished number 29, and you're trying to bring Nick Bosa some bookending power at the edge rushing position. Now, I rewrote this article. I didn't rewrite it. I was adding to it as I got more quotes over the course of the evening. And I just love what Mykel Williams said on our conversation with him via the Zoom call. Here's the first line. The 49ers indeed kept it simple to open their critical 2025 NFL draft. They selected Georgia defensive end Mykel Williams at number 11 overall, giving star edge Nick Bosa an immensely talented bookend. I can't wait to learn from him, Williams said. I've got so many questions. I mean, we could talk about the 49ers all-star coaching staff now that Robert Saleh is back. Obviously, Chris Kasarik is one of the best to do it at the defensive line position. But they've got Bosa, and Kyle Shanahan was calling Bosa a ninja today. And I remember talking to Larry Johnson, who was Bosa's defensive line coach at Ohio State. It's hard to believe that was already like 6 years ago after the 49ers drafted Bosa. I gave Larry Johnson a call, and he was talking about all the hand usage that Nick Bosa excels at. And he was saying, you know, this guy's going to be better than Joey Bosa, and it all ended up true. Nick Bosa, such a refined warrior at his craft at that edge rusher position. Now he can share what he knows with Mykel Williams, who's obviously still trying to develop as a pass rusher, who's only 20 years old, who's got so much meat left on the bone developmentally. But the 49ers feel they can get that run defense, the edge setting part, taken care of. They also have a player named Yetur Gross-Matos, who they were actually really happy with last year when Yetur was healthy. He won an NFC Defensive Player of the Week award against the Bears. They can mix and match Bosa, Mykel Williams, Yetur Gross-Matos. Occasionally in some of these NASCAR pass rushing packages, you can have Gross-Matos on the inside, or you could have Mykel Williams on the inside, or vice versa. Heck, if they want to get really crazy, maybe even Nick Bosa will occasionally work against guards. I don't think that's going to happen all too often, but they love Williams' potential ability to work against guards on the inside because the athleticism of edge rushers can give interior linemen real problems, especially when the guy's got 34 and 3/8-inch arms. I mean, I can't fit my own wingspan in here. I think I have long arms too. But Mykel Williams, his arms are longer than Shamar Stewart's, and everybody's talking about how long Shamar Stewart's arms are. So, you know, what do we talk about with offensive tackles versus offensive guards? What's the big delineation? Except for Will Campbell, of course, who went number 4 overall today. It's the arm length, right? If somebody's got an arm length under 34 inches, especially under 33 inches, as an offensive lineman, they're almost always considered a guard at the NFL level because they're working in closed quarters. And they're going to be working probably against some defensive tackles who also have shorter arms. Well, the hack to beat that is to move an edge rusher. If he's physical enough, you can move him to the inside to face these guards, and his athleticism and his length can theoretically be a big-time matchup advantage against the guards. That's the thinking here. That's what the 49ers have done with Charles Omenihu, with Arden Key. They did it with Eric Armstead. That's been the focus. That's why Chris Kasarik dabbled in this all the way back in his time as Detroit's defensive line coach. And then I think he really put this on a new level with the 49ers once he got to work with Eric Armstead. And then once some of those guys like Amenahu and Arden Key started coming in. They do it with Yetur Gross-Matos already. They want to do more of it. I think that the fact that they only had one guy who was really capable of doing that on an inside-out level, and he was hurt for a lot of last season in Gross-Matos, hurt the 49ers on several levels. Well, entering this 2025 season, they're going to be able to develop Mykel Williams in that regard and mix and match him with Gross-Matos and have Nick Bosa on the other edge. So, I mean, this was a big-time need for the 49ers. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But John Lynch is also not being coy. He's saying this is not the last defensive lineman that the 49ers are going to pick. There's still a lot of defensive linemen available in this draft, and especially defensive tackle is particularly deep. So tomorrow, maybe that's the next pick for the 49ers, number 43. Maybe they trade up slightly in that second round. Maybe it's Darius Alexander out of Toledo, who I had in my mock draft to the 49ers. Why don't we just pour one out right now for all those well-researched mock drafts that had the 49ers picking a cornerback in the first round? They were never going to pick a corner in the first round. That wasn't going to happen. It was going to be a player in the trenches. It was either going to be a premium offensive tackle if that offensive tackle fell down to the 49ers, or if they would have had a good opportunity to trade up for one, or it was going to be a defensive lineman. Take your pick, tackle or edge. They ultimately went edge because they really loved Mykel Williams, but it was going to be one of the two. Will Campbell, Armand Membu, Kelvin Banks Jr., all off the board before number 11. So we didn't have a chance to find out if they would have gone offensive line over the D linemen. We ended up seeing the 49ers go in the direction that I think was very apparent that they would go in if everything broke as expected ahead of pick number 11. And that was the defensive line and the guy that they liked. We had a list of guys that they liked, right? We knew that they liked Mykel Williams. We thought that they liked Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle. We figured that they were at least curious about Shamar Stewart. They brought him in on the top 30 visit. I think they liked Derek Harmon because they sent all those guys up to Oregon for the pro day. And we know that John Lynch is close to Dan Lanning. I mean, there were a lot of realistic possibilities for the 49ers at pick number 11. In my mock draft, I had Derek Harmon going to the 49ers. That was before the flag came up for the shoulder issue, and he dropped to number 21. He ended up going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Mykel Williams was always expected to go around the middle of the first round. And at pick number 11, slightly higher than the middle of the first round. I think there was 4 picks higher than the mock draft consensus expectation. So the 49ers, especially since they didn't have to trade up, get relatively equal value right here with the pick relative to the mock drafts in this situation. So that should explain to you why they picked this guy. The article is up on the San Francisco Standard. I promise you this is the most in-depth piece that you're going to get on the matter. I worked hard on it. Here is the Jed York quote. Salah's back in the building, ladies and gentlemen. Hashtag trenches. Very important to Robert Saleh. This goes back to the 2019 season when they hired Chris Kasarik, and there was a big emphasis from the 49ers on the adaptability of the front. I mean, that got Eric Armstead's career resuscitated. Eric Armstead, who picked number 2 for Jacksonville today after they traded up, he was up on the stage, Walter Payton, Man of the Year. But Eric Armstead will credit Chris Kasarik for really unearthing his potential. And it happened after Kasarik showed up and was Robert Saleh's defensive line coach in that 2019 season. And what he did was that he made sure that that inside-out adaptability of Eric Armstead was really well leveraged. I mean, I still remember I started covering the team in 2017, and this was Armstead's 3rd year with the 49ers, and they decided they were going to have him play Leo edge rusher, and he didn't have much of a chance to play defensive tackle that year. It was a lot of edge rusher. Then he got hurt, and it was a total mess. And they just didn't really know what exactly to do with him. And Robert Saleh came in, and Chris Kasarik came in. It was especially Kasarik because Robert Saleh was just trying to figure things out. Armstead had come off of a season where, there was a lot of injury issues early on, and they were playing DeForest Buckner over 1,000 snaps on the inside. And, they had potential, but they didn't really have a verve with that defensive line. And they obviously added more pieces, and Bosa came in 2019 to really handle one of the edge questions. But the one thing that Chris Kasarik did was that he leveraged the matchups in such a favorable way for Armstead to be either inside or outside. And he took what had worked for him in Detroit and he just made it so much better. Armstead's career turned into one where he got paid the next season. He started making $17 million a year, and he credited his turnaround to Chris Kasarik. And the 49ers surged to the top run defense in the league with the type of adaptability that they were showing up front. So that's something that's been missing for the 49ers. That's something that's eroded over the course of time. They've needed to renovate this defensive line, and the big renovation for San Francisco is happening now. It has begun. It is not yet finished. Mykel Williams is the 49ers' first selection in that big D-line renovation, and Chris Kasarik is going to try to work some of the same magic that he was able to work with Eric Armstead, that he was able to work with Amenahu, so on and so forth. I'm going to take some of your questions. Mike is probably going to send me a list of players that he wants to see the 49ers go after early in round 2. Will Darius Alexander go in round 2? Will he go in round 3? Are the 49ers going to turn to an offensive weapon sooner rather than later? I think in my mock draft, I still had him going with defensive weapons in the top 2 rounds and an Alec Eilmanor in the 3rd. But all those are projections. As you can see, those projections, a lot of them weren't correct for the 49ers. That's what usually happens. The draft is famously unpredictable. But they end up picking up a player who they believe has the necessary high floor capability to take them into this next era of the defensive line. And now they have to add more to it. I emphasized when we did that show in front of the Golden Gate Bridge this morning, my big emphasis was that this is pick 1. This is not the whole draft. 49ers have a league-high 11 picks. It's them and the Ravens with the most picks in this draft. 10 more to go, and it's the meat in the middle of this draft that looks like it's the strongest talent-wise, and that's where the 49ers picks are, right? They've got 10 more. Like, they still have a full assortment of picks entering Friday. They hit on so many picks in 2024. That was a good start. They need to do that again because they weren't fast enough last year. They weren't healthy enough last year. They weren't hungry enough last year. Whether or not they get to a spot where they're faster, healthier, or hungrier is going to be determined in large part over the course of the next 2 days. I think Mykel Williams is a great start. Georgia's lauded his leadership. He played on that high ankle sprain. You watch his tape. He's great on some of those game stunt maneuvers. Brian Baldinger loves the pick. I mean, if you talk to Baldy, he knows a lot about line play. He thinks he's going to pair well with Bosa. That's all fine and dandy for the 49ers. But how they build out this roster, spots 10 to 53, how much youth, quality youth they're able to infuse, how much hunger they're able to infuse at those positions on that cost-controlled basis as they try to pay Brock Purdy and George Kittle. How the 49ers accomplish that is going to determine how good this team is in 2025 and beyond. That's why this draft is so important, because the only way to build the meat and potatoes of your roster is through the draft. Like, the only way you can consistently do that is through the draft, especially if you're a team like the 49ers who so aggressively try to play the draft pick formula. There's a reason they have 11 picks, the most in the NFL in this draft, because they aggressively play the comp pick formula. There's a reason why the Ravens are tied with them for the most picks in this draft at 11, because they aggressively play the comp pick formula. I mean, Ozzie Newsome over the years did such a great job with that comp pick formula. I don't know if he emulated the Patriots or if it was the other way around, but it was New England and it was the Baltimore Ravens who were at the top of the league. Now the 49ers are doing that more aggressively and more successfully than anybody, which means they push so many chips into the draft. And they didn't have good drafts outside of Brock Purdy in 2022 and 2023. That put so much pressure on 2024 and obviously 2025, especially coming off of the 6-10 year where they just truly ran out of gas. So the first pick after a successful 2024 draft of 2025 is a player who they believe has a high floor and also a high ceiling in Mykel Williams. His tape is a whole heck of a lot of fun to watch. You know, Kyle Shanahan actually said that Williams got better over time as he watched the tape. He didn't expect his hand usage to be as good as it was. So there already probably is some polish in this, but you have to take everything with a grain of context here, right? He didn't get to play as much as a lot of these other guys got to play on their teams because he was on Georgia's defensive line. He was averaging under 30 snaps a game up until his junior season, where it was 33 snaps a game, but that was on the high ankle sprain. So I think that there's a tremendous amount of untapped potential here that the 49ers really love. And again, I don't think that it's a bad formula to do what the Eagles did to win a Super Bowl, and that is draft Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, it was a dominant defensive line at the college level. Who's to say that these guys can't port it to the NFL level after what we saw Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith do in Philadelphia? So the 49ers, now we get to see the rest of the defensive line construction. I mean, I should go back to my article up on the San Francisco Standard where we look at the construction of the Rams and the Eagles defensive lines, because it looks like the 49ers might be following some of that formula. I should probably tweet this one out again. Let's open this. It's probably, a month old. I think this is what I came out with right after free agency started dying down a little bit. Yep, here we go. The title of the article up on the San Francisco Standard is, "What the heck are the 49ers doing? A hard look at the rival Rams may hold the answer." And then Lombardi herself, Margot, had these graphics. She made these graphics. She did a really good job. She even gets credit for them. See, her name is in the San Francisco Standard. Whenever you take somebody else's work, by the way, it's a good idea to link it or to credit them. We got some people on the internet trying to piggyback off of hard work without even linking that hard work. Those people should probably know who they are. I'm not going to single them out right now on this video, but I think that it's really important to not steal and to credit people for their hard work. Anyway, we're going to credit Lombardi herself for her good job here, taking a look at how the Rams defensive line was built. And then she also made one with the Eagles, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. But every single shaded player here under acquisition method was picked in the NFL draft. Take a look first at the 49ers defensive line last season. There's not a whole lot of shading here, especially at the defensive end position. They had Nick Bosa, first-round draft pick back in 2019. They have Robert Beal, fifth-round draft pick in 2023. And Beal didn't play a whole lot of snaps. The grade also wasn't all that great. Bosa had a 91 PFF grade. Beal, who, by the way, played at the University of Georgia, but wasn't nearly as touted of a pick as Mykel Williams, the 55.3 coming out of the fifth round. So you look at this, and then you just had a bunch of free agents at defensive end. Leonard Floyd, Yetur Gross-Matos, who I think was a quality pickup. He's still with the 49ers. Sam Okawanu, quality pickup, but, I mean, it's a player with limits, right? This is not an ultra-talented player. He's more of a grinder up there. Floyd was a Band-Aid free agent. What the 49ers are trying to do is get more like this. Look at the Rams. Look at all this gold shading. Those are all draft picks along the defensive line. Byron Young, 2023. Jared Verse, first-round pick in 2024. You go down into defensive tackle. Braden Fisk, second-round pick out of Florida State in 2024. Then they had other draft picks in the middle rounds, which is what makes tomorrow so important for the 49ers. The Rams picked up Kobe Turner in the third round, Bobby Brown the third in the fourth round, Tyler Davis in the sixth round. These are all fairly high-snap guys for the Rams. So you go up, and Byron Young, by the way, in the third round as well, out of Tennessee for the Rams. So they built this defensive line through a couple drafts, and they built it very robustly. I mean, it got a lot better over the course of the 2025 season. We can also look at the Eagles, and I think I should get that one open because Philadelphia really focused on those edge players, or really focused on those edge players and those defensive tackles out of Georgia, which is where Mykel Williams went to school. I'm going to see if I could find that Eagles formula, because I do not think that it is a bad idea for the 49ers to take a page out of Philadelphia's book. Here we go. Also created by Lombardi herself. Did a great job here. The Eagles, they also have a lot of green shading under acquisition method. That means that these are draft picks for the Philadelphia Eagles. Josh Sweat, that was a draft pick who they made way back in 2018. 4th round pick, goes to illustrate the importance of the middle rounds. Those are coming up tomorrow and on Saturday. Nolan Smith, he is a Georgia product, teammate of Mykel Williams at Georgia, 1st round pick in the 2023 NFL draft. Jalix Hunt, 3rd round pick. Brandon Graham, he had been around for a while. He just retired, 1st round pick in 2010 for the Eagles. It just goes to show you, though, how well Howie Roseman built that team. He really had some guys who were fixtures for a long time between Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat. But then Jalen Carter, again, another Georgia Bulldog, 1st round pick in 2023. Milton Williams, 3rd round pick. I mean, you've got, this is a big, big time snap load for the Philadelphia Eagles, and good grades, a lot of green on the right side coming through the NFL draft. And the school that shows up most on that list is the University of Georgia. We could talk a little about Kirby Smart and the adaptability that he demands out of his defensive linemen. Kirby Smart is a disciple of Nick Saban, who is a disciple of Bill Belichick. So way back in the early 90s, the original iteration of the Cleveland Browns had Bill Belichick as the head coach, Nick Saban as the defensive coordinator. Nick Saban then eventually became the head coach at the University of Alabama. His defensive coordinator at Alabama was Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart was the most successful disciple of Saban's at Alabama. He went to the University of Georgia to become the head coach. You can trace the Kirby Smart defense and a lot of the principles that Kirby Smart tried to instill in his players all the way back to Belichick with the Cleveland Browns. And that's, 35 years ago. But obviously, Belichick is a disciple of Bill Parcells, and those were some great Giants defenses in the 1980s. One of the hallmarks of a Kirby Smart defense in college has been adaptability. Up until this NFL draft, I've talked about that adaptability. You probably heard me talk a lot about it. I've talked a lot about it, though, in the context of defensive backs. The star defensive back position, the one that Jalen Ramsey played a lot of under Brandon Staley in 2020 for the Rams, somebody that's an outside cornerback, but then moves in to play inside cornerback. That used to be a foreign concept, by the way. Like, you used to be either an outside cornerback or used to be an inside cornerback. But that whole star position, a lot of that goes back to the whole Belichick, Saban, Kirby Smart tree. Kirby Smart runs the star at Georgia, so he's got defensive backs who are versatile. He doesn't limit the demand for adaptability to the secondary, though. Kirby Smart wants his defensive linemen to be as adaptable as possible as well. So we saw 3 technique. We saw 5 technique. We saw some stand-up outside linebacker from Mykel Williams at Georgia. And it was a defense that ran things a little bit differently than the 49ers, who love to just fire off the football in the wide 9 under Chris Kasarik. There's a lot less reading and there's a lot more firing off the ball. But the 49ers saw enough, and they definitely saw enough adaptability in what Kirby Smart was asking Mykel Williams to do, that they're comfortable that his skill set can translate into their attacking style. Now, I'll tell you that we talked to Mykel Williams, and he's super excited to play in the 49ers system. He thinks it's going to earn him more sack opportunities because he's not going to have to react to these running plays. He physically feels, and the 49ers feel, he can set an edge just by his presence on the outside. That's the trick of the wide 9. You're gambling so much into the realm of pass rushing. You're stretching these guys out. There's a ton of space in between all of these defenders. You're gambling so much in the realm of pass rushing that sometimes you might lose a little bit against the run, especially if that edge player is incapable of holding his own against the run if he's thinking pass rush, if he's pinning his ears back. So you want a premier talent at that edge rusher position who can still deliver against the run and still eat that space, set that edge, even if his ears are pinned back and he's thinking pass rushing, because they're attacking first and reading second in this defense. It takes a special, unique athlete for that to happen, which is why people thought that Shamar Stewart might be the 49ers pick. But I think there was a little too much clay to mold in that situation. I think they wanted the more ready-made prospect with Mykel Williams, and he has a lot of Shamar Stewart's measurables. He's got the 6'5" height. He's got the 34-inch arms. He doesn't have quite as fast of a 40, but he still has a really fast 10-yard split at 161. I think that they found a player who they believe fits that physical mold, who can do both things for them, and that's a really, really tricky thing to find given the aggressive defense that the 49ers play. So that's why they picked Mykel Williams. All right, it's time for me to answer some questions. I promised I would. Why don't we delve into the comment section? Please let us know what the concerns are about Williams. I started with the concerns about Williams. He played on the high ankle sprain last year, and he didn't have all that much sack production in college. But I think it's unfair that people put him into the Shamar Stewart bucket. I'm just being objective here. You have to look at this, with clear eyes. You see a very good edge defender, which is what the 49ers needed the most. This was a terrible run defense. Nobody told you how bad this 49ers run defense was as much as I did last year. I mean, I was banging the table saying how bad this run defense was. They need a lot of things to improve the run defense. They needed better schematics. Robert Saleh's back for that. They needed a better secondary edge position. They needed better rotation at defensive end, and we can talk about the defensive tackle and the linebacker needs and the safety tackling needs later. But the one thing that they might have needed at the top of the whole list was a better edge defender opposite Nick Bosa against the run who can give the 49ers consistent production there. And that's who Mykel Williams is. Now, the pass rushing is not as good as the edge defending, but that's where you make the projection. And that's where you say, okay, well, it may not be as good, but how bad was it? Well, he still had 14 sacks and a lot more pressures over his time in college. He still ran the game and stunt maneuvers well. How does he project to work in that inside-out role opposite Nick Bosa? How can he develop? The 49ers think that can happen. Every single draft pick is a projection of sorts, right? You have to say, how's this guy going to project at the NFL level? And the 49ers think that it's going to work well for Mykel Williams as he moves forward. He's about a 24th percentile pass rusher in college. That means that he's better than about a quarter of the draft prospects. James Pierce Jr. and Abdul Carter were the top pass rushers in this draft as far as pass rush grade percentile at 95th and 94th percentile. But Pierce obviously had some of the football character concerns that seemed to scare away a lot of teams, actually. I mean, with a 95th percentile grade, you would think that maybe he goes as high as Abdul Carter. That obviously didn't happen for James Pierce Jr. Mike Green was also really high up at 89th percentile. But then you have the flip side. You have the run defense, which is, I think, equally as important to the 49ers in this case. And they decided to go run defense first, given how bad they were in that regard last year. But I've been sitting here telling you exactly who Mykel Williams is. Whether or not you decide to listen to what I'm saying, that's up to you. But we're saying that this is a guy who needs some pass rushing development, but he's got the tools that excite the 49ers, but is a very, very good edge setter against the run. And that was priority number one for San Francisco. People think the 49ers' next pick might be defensive tackle. We'll see. We'll see who's on the board for the 49ers at number 43. Remember that this is a tremendously deep defensive tackle class, though. So when that's the case, you don't necessarily have to reach for a guy if you think that there is high supply of defensive tackles. I said Darius Alexander, number 43. If the 49ers go for a defensive tackle, you would get another rangy player. Obviously, they think Mykel Williams is rangy. I think Darius Alexander projects really well out of Toledo to the wide 9, 4-3. And as I showed you on the depth chart, and I've showed that many times before, there are real holes for the 49ers at defensive tackle. That is a spot where, I mean, John Lynch isn't even hiding it. He's saying they're going to draft more defensive linemen. And personally, that's who I've mocked to the 49ers, and we'll see if some of that comes to fruition. Why didn't the 49ers take Jalen Walker? Because they think Mykel Williams is a better player, especially against the run, than Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker's 243 pounds. Mykel Williams is about 270. There's a big difference there. When the top priority is setting the edge, as John Lynch talked about on Tuesday, as we've known, when that's the top priority, you're going to go for the bigger defensive end. It doesn't take rocket science. If there's people here thinking that Jalen Walker is going to be the pick, they just haven't been paying attention. It's like, learn the game and learn how the 49ers approach issues when they face them. So, run defense. How has Robert Saleh approached this issue? Has he approached it by bringing in a 240-pound defensive end? No, he approaches it by bringing in a 270-pounder who can be a 3-down player, who can stop the run so they can have some fun pass rushing. I mean, I don't think it's that hard to put 2 and 2 together. I never thought the 49ers were going to bring in a 240 to 250-pound edge. That's what Jalen Walker would have been. I get that he also might have some linebacker adaptability. This is not a Micah Parsons type of defense. Robert Saleh has done things the Robert Saleh way. Chris Kasarik has done things the Chris Kasarik way. And they actually have moved from the D Ford experiment back then. That was a 240-pound edge rusher. And back then, they were way more equipped and insulated to absorb a 240-pound edge rusher because they had Eric Armstead on this team. Right? I mean, Nick Bosa, rookie year in 2019, they brought him in alongside D Ford. So they brought in one run-stopping defensive end. Bosa can obviously do everything, but they brought in one 270-pounder and one 240-pounder. But that's not where they are right now. This is a number 29 run defense that needs to get better. They weren't going to bring in another 240-pound edge rusher with their number 1 pick. They're going to bring in the 270-pound guy who's they think is the best edge setter in all of college football. Chuck 559 gets it. Shout out to the 559. Stop the run, have some fun. That's exactly what the 49ers are trying to do. Thanks to all of our members. If you're a member, you get a cool little logo, a little, I guess it's a, what do you call it? A little emoji, whatever, next to your name. You could sign up for a membership on the channel right now. You should also sign up for subscription to the San Francisco Standard. Link is in the description of this article. The article is up on the screen. This is the most in-depth you're going to get on Mykel Williams to the 49ers. We're also going to be able to talk to him tomorrow. So, I don't know. We're going to ask him, is he going to fly Delta or is he going to fly United across country from Atlanta to San Francisco? Talk about some of the adaptability. They called him the Jack. They called him the Jack in Georgia's defense. That is the 5 technique, the 3 technique, some outside linebacker. 49ers love that. I mean, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were talking at length about the versatility that they see and the different packages they can run with Mykel Williams coming off of that defensive end position. Who do I think the 49ers get for the 1 tech? That's the bigger defensive tackle in the middle. That's the fire hydrant. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they don't draft somebody for that position. Maybe they really believe Evan Anderson can take the next step and really command that interior fire hydrant role. I don't think that one is as high up on the priority list for San Francisco. I think they need a 3 tech first. They've got the 5 tech now. They've got a guy that I think he can play the 9 technique as well. I think they like Williams and his adaptability to play an array of positions across the offensive line. But I think they need a true 3 tech out of this draft, and that's where the depth of this defensive tackle class comes in. Yes, the 49ers did try to trade up for Mykel Williams. Thankfully, it didn't work out because they would have lost some draft capital doing so. He was there for them anyway at pick number 11. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that people think that the draft is over. They do have 10 other picks, the most in the league, moving forward. We've got people thinking it's going to be Darius Alexander. That's who I mocked to the 49ers in the 2nd round. Stay tuned tomorrow to see if that indeed will be the case. Anyway, the 49ers pick Mykel Williams. We saw the video of Mykel. We saw the video of John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and Jed York talking to Mykel Williams. We can also take a look at this one. This is Mykel Williams celebrating back at home. What a cool moment for Mykel Williams. We got a super chat here from Rob Bart. Do I want the 49ers to get Alec Eilmanner? I mean, I mock drafted him to the 49ers. Do I want them to get him? I just, my mock draft is more what I think the 49ers might do instead of who do I want them to get. I think that he is a ferocious blocking wide receiver, which is really important to the 49ers. I think there's a lot of meat still left on the bone for Alec Eilmanner's development moving forward, which should be extremely intriguing to San Francisco. And I think that, you know, when you look at how this team is currently constructed, they could definitely use another wideout. I wouldn't rule out the 49ers signing Amari Cooper if they could get him at a good price. That's the key, getting him at a good price. I think they're still a wideout short of where they want to be. Now, do they go through the draft to fill that need, or do they go through free agency? They go both. I mean, it's all possible, but I think that wide receiver is a position that you can't stack deeply enough in this day and age. So Alec Eilmanner, I know John Lynch likes him. That might be a 49ers pick tomorrow. But Mykel Williams was the 49ers pick today. And an intriguing pick for sure. And it was a predictable one, too. We knew that they weren't going to mess around. We knew they were going to go to the trenches in this first round. Defensive line was more likely than offensive line just because of the way that the draft was set up. And the pick ends up being Mykel Williams. Any more good questions? If not, it's time for some In-N-Out Burger. Do any of the NFC West selections worry me? Well, I'm a neutral observer, so nothing worries me. I just like to analyze things. And I think everybody's trying to get good players. Like, I mean, we'll see how they pan out. Mykel Williams can crash and burn and not be a good player for San Francisco. The NFL level's tough, but you're making projections, you're assigning probabilities, and you're doing the best that you can. Well, I want to do a whole separate video talking about the rest of the NFC West guys. So I appreciate the super chat. I appreciate the question. I will answer it soon. I want to dive into some of the tape and some of the fits that we've seen across the rest of the division. This was a bang day for me. I'm at the facility. I'm talking to Lynch. I'm talking to Shanahan. Then I run back here to the hotel room. I get a hotel room just to do this kind of show for you guys. So we'll have those answers later. After In-N-Out Burger. Maybe tomorrow. I have another question right here. This is from Reese. Thank you, Reese. You're visiting San Francisco and going to eat at 3 places. Sam's, Fambrini's, and Taqueria Cancun. It sounds like you've been listening to me. Would you recommend different burger, sandwich, burrito places instead? No, I wouldn't. Those are the champions. Go to Sam's for your double cheeseburger. Go to Fambrini's in Palo Alto for a good sandwich. And go to Deli Board if you want a sandwich in San Francisco. There's several places you go. M-Stop, Deli Board. You could also go to Jumpstart Coffee for your breakfast sandwich. To write all these things down. Les Sandwich on Columbus in North Beach for a sandwich. I mean, it just depends on how long you're in town. You should probably make your trip about a week long so you could hit all the places that you go to. But you can't go wrong with Sam's, Fambrini's, the Chimichurri Surf and Turf, and Taqueria Cancun. All right, I'm losing my voice. It's been a busy day. Thank you guys for all the love. I appreciate it. That is why the 49ers picked Mykel Williams in the first round. We've done a lot of work. Can't say anybody else is doing all these videos plus 1,000+ word articles. So support the channel, support the San Francisco Standard. Go check it out. Now is the right time to sign up because you're getting the most in-depth draft coverage that there is. Mykel Williams, and that article is up there in the description. Thanks again. That's why the 49ers made the move that they did. The draft is far from over. 10 more picks coming for the 49ers over the course of the next 2 days. So stay tuned, hit that sub button, and we'll talk to you very soon.